Hey guys, on today's video, I'm going to show you how I would treat biceps tendinitis on myself with a Gua Sha tool. Oh, ouch. Let's get going. First thing I got here is my stick-on Gua Sha tool. The sickle-shaped one, very diverse, and just some regular organic coconut oil. So I'm going to put that on. And so a common place I actually have issues with my elbow, doesn't happen very often, but I will feel it right through here. That biceps muscle is basically this whole bulk right here, and then it comes down, and a tendon plus some other fascial structures come in, but mainly that tendon comes down deep and inserts into the forearm. There's other branches of things that connect down into the forearm. That is your main tendon. You can feel it's like a rope. That's a common place for myself and folks to feel it. Another very common area is right through here. That's not necessarily the biceps tendon itself, but a lot of other muscles and fascial tissues that come through there and connect into that same area. But there's two heads of the biceps, long head and a short head, and one of them inserts up in the shoulder and one actually inserts onto the shoulder blade. But the most common for distal biceps tendinitis is pain right here in this area up here. Other people who get tendinitis up in here, it's usually shoulder type tendinitis, but we're just going to cover this area right through here because that's where I mainly feel it sometimes. So what I'm going to do is take my cream, get her good and applied, and then I'm just going to take my Gua Sha tool and use it as a scoop. I'm just kind of right now just exploring that distal portion of the biceps, kind of feeling for is any areas jumping out at me of like, ooh, that's tender. And right now as I go through, actually right through here, that secondary point that I pointed out earlier, that's actually a little bit tender. So that may be the first spot that I start. And then right here, as that bicep muscle really becomes a lot of tendon, I can feel right there. So those are going to be my two main areas that I'm going to check. So I'm going to start working that inside one first. I've increased pressure, started off light, and then I'll gradually increase pressure as tolerated. But I'm looking for those areas that are tender. That's how I know where to treat. That's where the inflammation is, and that's where I want blood flow to go. So I'm going to work this area over here. I've said this before, you can go either direction. I'll sometimes go either direction, but a lot of times I will go with whatever direction is the most comfortable for my opposite hand to go. And for me, that's usually pushing. It's just easier for me to push, especially with my left hand. I'm right-handed. My left hand likes to push. So I'm going to work this area over here. You can kind of see, or at least I can, that redness and the petechiae. Not a big deal. Some will disagree with this, but that tells me that I'm on the right track. Some of the research and clinicians will say, you don't have to have that. And they are true, but usually when I see that show up, that's a good indicator to me that that's an area that I would like to, that I want to focus in on and treat. So as I'm working that area right there on the inside, a lot of that pain has started to dissipate. And as you can see right there, that's not even really in the area technically of my bicep, but it is a very common area with biceps tendinitis. Technically the bicep is right through here and inserts in here. You have an aponeurosis, a very dense fibrous fascial structure that comes down, connects through all these areas. But again, that's a very common area. That's actually more in the elbow flexor area, but it is still very involved with biceps tendinitis. So the other area that I found earlier is right through there with that biceps tendon. Very thick, ropey structure. And so now actually, it's a little bit easier for me to get that with a pulling motion. This just feels a bit awkward, the way that the muscle itself curves down. I'm not able to get into that biceps tendon as well, so I'm going to go with a pulling motion. And it is crunchy. Now, I really wasn't having any elbow pain or biceps tendonitis symptoms per se, but I will do this occasionally because I do it as maintenance work. It's no different than my wellness routine as far as stretching or sauna or cold bath or anything like that. I will do this as maintenance work and to prevent injury. I work with my hands all day. My hobbies include working with my hands. I like to work out, so I want to keep things going. I do not like to be stopped due to pain. So again, I'm going to work this area right through here. I'm not vocalizing it, but I'm gradually increasing pressure as I go along. And now I'm starting to see some of that petechiae creep up in from the tendon area, the biceps tendon area, into that distal head of the biceps muscle. And so I'm going to start working up into the belly of that muscle. And so now a good bit of that discomfort, as I push deeper and applied more pressure, a good bit of that discomfort is really dissipated. So I'm going to start exploring more areas with a more concentrated, heavier pressure. Because when I went with that light pressure earlier throughout that bicep, I really wasn't feeling much. So now I'll use that increased pressure and right up here at the top of that bicep. As I flex these monsters, you can see here's the top head, or the more proximal portion, the top of it, and here's the more bottom distal portion of it. And I can feel, as I use a little bit more of that pressure, I can feel that area as well. This is not a common area that I feel when my elbow flares up or gets injured or I overwork it. This is not a common area that I feel it, but I'm still exploring that whole anatomy to check for areas that have increased tissue resistance. Possible areas that are inflamed, but I don't feel them. They're below that threshold of where I notice them as pain. In the trigger point world, those are called latent trigger points. That means you don't feel them, but they're there. As I work this one, I actually feel it kind of shoot up to the top of my shoulder. So I'm going to work this area right in here, gradually increasing pressure until a good bit of that discomfort has dissipated. And then right about there, it really doesn't have any of that bite anymore. So I can be done with that spot right there. So now I'm back to my exploring kind of at a deeper pressure, not feeling much over there at all on that outside portion. But when I go to the inside with a little bit more of that pressure, that, my friends, has a little bit of bite to it. It's not a tickle. But again, that's not an area that I typically feel. But since I'm using the tool and checking out all these areas, I want everybody to be nice and happy. And again, I do this a lot of the times for wellness and prevention. If any of you have ever seen the videos, on YouTube that somebody tears their bicep tendon and they're showing it, to tear your bicep tendon, that is usually a very chronic situation. Somebody has let that go far too long without addressing it. Especially if they're just doing a basic curl and it just pops, they've let something go far too long. Yeah, right through there. And now I would say it's about got as half as much bite as it did initially. And then as I go along, it's just nice, warm, and it's starting to feel just like it's a pressure. And most of that discomfort has really dissipated. So that tells me that I've, for the most part, completed that area. So there you have it. If I had biceps tendinitis, this is how I would treat it on myself. I also do this for maintenance and wellness to prevent that from happening. So that's what I do with my stick-on Gua Sha tool and some coconut oil. Very simple, straightforward. And so there you go. That's how I would treat myself for a biceps tendinitis with a Gua Sha tool. Hope this helps.